Canelo's big deal and his DAZN and Eddie Hearn gonna freeze out Jamal Charlo? Please like and subscribe. Help us hit 10,000 subscribers. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Welcome to another episode of Friday's Check Hook. Lots to get into. We've been sidelined with various illnesses and haven't done a show on the big Canelo deal, the 5-year, 11-fight, $365 million deal with DAZN. Now, it's not with Eddie Hearn. That's an important distinction, right? It's important to understand that Matchroom and Eddie Hearn are not involved in this deal. This has nothing to do with Eddie and has nothing to do with Matchroom. It's just airing rights, streaming rights will be on DAZN. However, all of the top middleweights have at least a working relationship with that side of things, that Eddie Hearn and DAZN side of things. So this is a 10, actually an 11-fight deal, and Canelo is the biggest star in the sport, and now has the biggest contract in all of sports. And I want to get into this. Being from Dallas, Texas, this reminds me of something that I want to get into. In 2001, and stay with me here, in 2001, Alex Rodriguez, baseball player, A-Rod, signed the biggest contract in the history of sports. And that contract was so bad that the Rangers ended up paying him close to $110 million for 3 years of service. They were paying him a portion of that contract till 2009 to go play against them for the Yankees. A-Rod spent 3 years with the Rangers, 2001, 2002, and 2003. That's it. The Rangers were perennially bad. Last place team pretty much every year. They were just the last place team that happened to have the sport's biggest star. After the initial luster, coupled with the fact that the Rangers were awful, that allure of having A-Rod went away. The ballpark became empty. The ratings dropped. Look, you can't pay one guy that much money and expect to thrive. I don't care what it is. You can't do that. It's a formula for success. The Rangers couldn't sign anyone else. They couldn't get anyone to add to A-Rod, so all they had was the best player in baseball on the worst team in baseball. And they actually had to end up trading him to the Yankees, and they were paying a portion of that contract for A-Rod to go play against him. Now, you can't do that in boxing, right? If the contract turns bad, they can't trade him to someone else like A-Rod, like the Rangers traded A-Rod. Now, after A-Rod got traded to the Yankees and the Rangers no longer had to pay him when A-Rod opted out of his contract in 2009, in 2010 and 2011, something strange happened to the Rangers when they no longer had to pay that weird contract, that bad contract. They went to the World Series. They won consecutive pennants for the first time in franchise history because they no longer had that dead weight. What am I getting at here? Am I comparing Canelo Alvarez to the Texas Rangers? No. Look, Canelo's a great fighter. He's a top 5 to 10 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. No doubt about it. He's the legitimate middleweight champion of the world. No doubt. So, I'm not saying he's the last place guy. What I am saying, though, is what happens if he loses, right? Like, what if Canelo loses to Jacobs and then tries to bounce back and loses a title fight to Andrade or Billy Joe Saunders if Billy Joe's able to get a world title back at some point? What happens then? That luster of him being this hot thing that just beat Triple G, that's all gone, right? So, look, Canelo has the ability to perhaps beat any fighter at middleweight. I'm not saying anything crazy, right? He could beat Jacobs. He could beat Charlo. He could beat those guys. Could Canelo beat anyone in the division? Sure could. Can he definitely beat everyone in the middleweight division? No way. No way. Will he just run through the middleweight division, the loaded 160-pound division? Will Canelo just run through it? Absolutely not. Look, absolutely not. If Canelo fought Charlo, Jacobs, Andrade, and Billy Joe in that order, He would lose at least one or two of those fights. Now, I can't tell you which ones he would lose, but he wouldn't win all of them, right? Look, only Floyd Mayweather does that. Only Floyd Mayweather rips through everyone without a problem. Every other great fighter, Pacquiao, Oscar, Mike Tyson, Sugar, they lost fights. They lost fights. And Canelo is an excellent fighter. He's not just going to rip through perhaps the most loaded division, top heavy division in the sport. He's just not going to do that. And it's not a knock on Canelo. These other guys are excellent fighters. If he fought those guys in that order, or any order, if they fought those four guys, Charlo, Jacobs, Andrade, Billy Joe, he would lose one or two of those fights. He just isn't at the level where he's, one of the greatest fighters that's ever lived. He can just go through guys like that. He's gonna go through a rough spot. So when he loses, say to Andrade, whose style is all wrong for Canelo, a tricky southpaw is all wrong for Canelo. What happens then? Is that luster gone? Because if it is, and you're only 2 years into this contract, and he's lost to two of these names, or 6 fights into this contract, and you have 5 fights left to go, and he's lost to two of these names, is he still demanding all that money? To fight who? You know what I'm saying? Like, if he loses to Jacobs, and I'd pick him to beat Jacobs. If he lost to Jacobs and Andrade, or Charlo and Andrade, is he the biggest star in the sport anymore? I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? But you still have to pay him like he is. That's the problem with the contract. I want to compare him to someone else. Oscar De La Hoya. Obviously, he's with Golden Boy. There's always going to be a natural comparison between the two. Oscar lost most of his big fights. We're going to be real. He lost to Mosley twice. He lost to Tito. He lost to B-Hop. He lost to Manny. He lost to Floyd. Right? But he was always willing to fight anyone and everyone. Don't get me wrong. Love Oscar or hate Oscar. What, you think he's underrated? You think he's overrated? Oscar was always willing to make the biggest and best fight possible. There was no fear in him as far as taking the big fight. There was no hesitation. When there were promotional issues back in 97 and 98 with Oscar and Felix Trinidad, Tito was with Don King at the time, fighting on Showtime, doing big things. Oscar was top ranks, big dog at that time. And there was trouble making that fight. And it took time to make that fight. Who did Oscar go in and fight? Ike Corte, who I thought was actually the most dangerous man at 47. And Corte is a Canadian fighter, good fighter, not the sexiest fighter in the world, not the biggest payday in the world, but a really good fighter, and the next best guy, and I thought probably the most dangerous guy in that division at that particular time. This is 98, I believe. So he put that huge fight with Trinidad into question, because he'd have to beat Corte. If Corte beats Trinidad, if Corte beat him, which was a completely reasonable thing, and we'll get into that fight, because that was a great fight. If Corte would have beat Oscar, Corte gets the Trinidad fight, right? And Oscar's left out, but Oscar had no fear. Oscar said, I'll beat Corte, and then I'll fight Trinidad. Okay, so Oscar threw caution to the wind, took the fight with Corte, got behind on the scorecards, got knocked down, had to come back. And I had Corte winning that fight. I thought Corte won that fight. But Oscar had to rally in the last 2 rounds, score a knockdown, win it big, just to eke out a close decision, which many thought he lost, right? It was a 50-50 fight in the eyes of most. I scored it for Corte by a couple points. It could have gone either way, right? But it was that kind of fight. And Oscar was willing to show how great he was. He was willing to pursue greatness at the risk of losing the biggest payday with Trinidad, which was the biggest fight in the sport at that time. Is Canelo willing to do that? Is Canelo willing to always fight the greatest fighter available to him? Oscar went up to 160 to fight at middleweight. He was no middleweight. Oscar's a welterweight, and he's a small junior middleweight. He at no point was a legitimate middleweight. He went up to fight Hopkins to chase greatness. So how great he was, and he got knocked out. But when you risk everything to pursue next level greatness, the fans will forgive you, and they will pay to tune in again. Does Canelo do that? Think about it, right? The comparison of Oscar going up to middleweight, going up to fight Hopkins, would be like Canelo going up to fight a 175-pounder. Do you think he would do that? Do you think Canelo would say, wow, that Dimitri Bivol is really good. I'm going to go fight him. Of course he wouldn't. It's not worth the risk. It's not worth it. So, again, this is not a knock on Canelo. Canelo's an excellent fighter. You could think he's the best middleweight in the world. I rank Charlo as the best middleweight in the world, just on the eye test and on skills. But by resume, it's Canelo. Just being reasonable. All right, so this is not knocking Canelo. I'm just saying, is he going to have that special instinct, that special desire to be great and always take the biggest fight like Oscar had? Probably not. And I'm not knocking him. It's just, that was, in that time era, in that span, in that era, that was a unique thing that Oscar did, and we really haven't seen it since. So if Canelo isn't willing to dare to be great at absurd levels like Oscar was, and if he can't simply run through these guys at middleweight, and he will get picked off at some point because the middleweight division is loaded, how is this contract make sense 5 years out? It doesn't. This is a big risk. I hope there's... Look, I want it to work out. I like Canelo to some degree, even though he got caught cheating. I just want boxing to do big. I just want boxing to be big. I just want boxing to do great. And he's the biggest star. So when he does good, the sport does good. So I want it to work out for him. DAZN is investing a ton of money into boxing, which I love. The app's not really working too well for me. We can get into that another time, but I like the path they're going. Give us more boxing. I love more boxing. You guys listening to me, you guys in the range of my voice, love boxing. If you didn't, you wouldn't be listening. So I want this to work out for Canelo. I want this to work out for Golden Boy. I want this to work out for DAZN. And I want this to work out for the middleweight division, which happens to be historically my favorite division to watch. I think it's the most competitive division. I think it's the perfect combination of skill, size, and speed. All right. That being said, I don't think this works out well. This doesn't end well. This ends like the Rangers with Alex Rodriguez. You can't pay one guy this much money. I don't see how it works out, but let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts, comments below. The other thing I wanted to get into is if I'm playing Golden Boy and I'm playing DAZN and I have the redhead from Guadalajara, who would I put him in the ring with? Right after the fielding fight, I have 10 fights left. Who am I trying to put him in the ring with? And I want to know what you guys think on this too, because I'm going to throw out some names. You guys are going to like some of them. Some of them are obvious. Some of you guys are going to think are ridiculous. I think Jacobs, that makes sense next. And then obviously you have Charlo and Andrade. Those three are obvious ones. I also think in the life of this contract, you get Munguia. I think Jarrett Hurd gets a crack. I think at some point of this contract, he does. And I think towards the end of the contract, he moves up to 68. And Gilberto and Callum Smith get a shot at the Canelo prize. Canelo said that he may not go back down to 160 after the fielding fight. Making 160, making the 160-pound limit without clenbuterol, ain't that easy, is it, Canelo? Oh, but get one thing straight. With the names and talent at 160 and the amount of money you're being paid, oh, you will go back down to 160, understood? The majority of that contract will be fought at 160. Understand that. You're being paid $365 million. You will be fighting in the loaded middleweight division. Look, 168 has plenty of good fighters, but not the draws, not the big money names that 160 has. So understand, Canelo. we're giving you a lot of money. You're going to fight the big names at 160. Let that be understood. And at 160, the Errol Spences and that type of stuff, they're still looking at you. Yeah, I can go to 160. Can you go to 168? No, that's ridiculous. But I can do 160. Right? So let that be known. You will be fighting at 160 for the majority of that contract. Now, I do think he goes up to 168 towards the very end of that contract. Like I said, I think he fights Gilberto Ramirez and Callum Smith at 168. I want to get to one other thing, now that we're on the middleweight division. Jamal Charlo, his luck keeps getting worse and worse. If it wasn't for bad luck, he would have no luck at all. You guys call me a homer, showing Texas love, because I do think Jamal Charlo is the best middleweight in the world. Period. Charlo was in line to get the winner of Canelo Triple G, too, as he was the mandatory. A Canelo fight on Cinco de Mayo weekend in Charlo's hometown of Houston at Minute Maid Park, where Canelo can sell out, made all too much sense. It was obvious. So, then Charlo got a curveball and was told he had to go fight the loser, not the winner, the loser of the Canelo Triple G rematch, which was Triple G. Charlo would have to beat Triple G, then he would get Canelo. Now Triple G is chatting about picking up the WBA regular strap against Marotta. Should Marotta beat Brandt, which is a big if, and we can get to that another time. But that's no safe bet, right? Marotta. If Marotta wins, we'll just put that in parentheses. If Marotta wins, Triple G's talking about fighting him next, leaving Charlo without a fight. Right? He didn't get Canelo. He was told he had to take another fight to earn what he's already accomplished, which was to be the mandatory. And then Triple G said, "Nah, I'm going to go fight elsewhere." This puts Charlo in a rough spot. And he's talking about him fighting the Polish guy, Silecki, who Jacobs beat. Which, again, look, I think that's a good fighter. You know, that does nothing to boost his stock, right? I mean, if Charlo beats Silecki better than Jacobs did, what does that do for Charlo's status? Nothing. He's still not a world champion, and he's still not in line to fight one, realistically. On top of all of that, every other top fighter at 160 has a working relationship with Eddie Hearn / DAZN, right? Canelo, Jacobs, Andrade. I think Triple G will sign to fight over there, as he is without a network. So now that HBO is gone out of boxing, and Triple G will not fight on HBO again, I think Triple G goes over to DAZN. Billy Joe has already worked out a contract with DAZN, as he was scheduled and signed to fight on that network before getting caught cheating. Does Charlo have to go over to that side of the promotional pond? Will Eddie Hearn and DAZN freeze him out if he doesn't? Because they can. They got the money to grease Mauricio Suleiman for a while to keep Charlo from getting that mandatory date. They can just grease Suleiman for a while and say, look, we understand that Charlo is the mandatory, but just take this and let's not pester us with that right now. They have the means to do that. On top of all of that, all the other middleweights are tied up with each other right now, right? They're talking about making Jacobs and Canelo next. There's been talks that Andrade would fight Billy Joe next to kind of confirm that he is the champ, right? You let him beat Billy Joe or let Billy Joe win his title back, because there's been some controversy on that drug testing thing, but Andrade seems like he wants that fight, and obviously Billy Joe would want it. So those guys are all going to be tied up with each other. Does Charlo have to go to Eddie Hearn and or DAZN to not be frozen out? In order to get any of these big money fights, does he have to go over to that side of the promotional pond, or will they just freeze him out if he doesn't? Let me know what you think. It's a tough spot for Charlo, who I think is the best middleweight in the world. Leave your thoughts, comments below on Charlo and the middleweight division and the Canelo Alvarez deal. For Friday's Check Hook, this is 3D Boxing, signing off, saying thank you and God bless.
Enjoy 3D Boxing vlog videos? Show us some love by clicking the like button. Don't miss a tweet, post, story, or video. 3dboxingvlog.com is also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hit the subscribe button now to stay inside the ring.